Well, good evening, every single one of you from our Kyria community here this evening. It is great that you can join this conversation. If you're tuning in right now, or if you're watching this later, my name's Amy Summerfield. I'm the CEO of Kyria Network, which is a network to champion, empower, and release women into their spheres of influence. And tonight, I'm joined by four incredible ladies that have a wealth of experience when it comes to leading in the charitable sector. And Lisa and I are delighted to be able to host this live this evening. So just to let you know, the plan for the evening is we're going to have a 30-minute conversation and we're going to probe these ladies about their leadership wisdom. And then for those of you that might be interested in exploring the conversation a little bit more, we're going to send out a Zoom link for you. And that Zoom link gives you an opportunity to come and join us back again at about 8:30, and any questions that you've got that you'd like to put to Anita, or you'd like to put to Becca, or you'd like to put to Lynn or myself or Lisa, hopefully we'll be able to answer. Just one or two more things to share before we just start with the programme for this evening. Just to let you know that these leadership focuses are new to Kyria. And what we're really wanting to do in this year of 2020 is take a different sphere of influence each month and really help those of you that are already leaders in that sphere, but maybe those of you that have an interest and you're up and coming in that sphere, to be encouraged by a panel of experts. And then the joy of course, Facebook Live is we get the opportunity to be able to watch back on that and then see how we can then take that into our own leadership and stuff. So we're going to pop up a link about how you can see the rest of the leadership focuses that are going to happen all the way through the year. There's going to be one a month, and the specific sphere that we're looking at this evening is the charitable sphere, and what it looks like for us to either lead a charity or what it looks like for us to volunteer in a charity and all of those things. And I'm delighted to introduce you to our three contributors this evening. We've got Anita Prem here. Anita, give us a wave. Anita, she is an author, she's a speaker, she's a charity leader, and she's also the founder of Freedom Charity, which she set up in 2010. And that was after her own story of being led into a forced marriage. And she's also a strong advocate about FGM and entertaining and also being part of the leverage of supporting the Metropolitan Police Authority. I'm sure she might tell you a little bit more about that later on. Then we've got here with us Becca Legg. Becca Legg is actually on our Council of Reference here at Kyria Network, but she's also the CEO of Restored, and that's a Christian organisation which has a mission to speak up about violence that is against women and to equip the church to stand against domestic abuse in all of its forms and to support survivors. And then finally, but not least, we have the amazing Lynn Swart, and Lynn Swart is the executive director of New Day United, which provides educational programs, development of entrepreneurial skills, and really ensuring health and well-being for so many people. And with me on this call and co-hosting that evening is our very own Lisa Leonce, who has a wealth of leadership wisdom herself. She runs her own business, she runs several charities, is on several boards, etc. And we're delighted to be part of this evening, aren't we, Lisa?
We are.
Yes, we are indeed. So I'm going to come to you first, Becca, and we're going to kick us off with those questions. And for those of you that are watching, feel free to pop some things into chat. And as I say, I'm going to be popping those links into chat very shortly about how you can keep learning more about the leadership events that we've got going off and then joining us in our Zoom. So, Becca, brace, here we come to you. We were just laughing about this, folks, before you all came on the live this evening. We said, did you ever envisage leading a charity? To which we all laughed, because I think there's an element of truth that none of us envisaged ever leading a charity. And I wonder, Becca, for you, what did God have to do to get you to this place of leadership?
Yeah, the answer to that is no, I never envisaged it. And there are days still when I still can't envisage it, even though I'm doing it. And, and I just think that's the reality for lots of us. And God had to do the most enormous work of me, is the truth, huge. And it was a long journey. It was a long journey of I always describe my career path as the most bizarre and convoluted career path ever, that had no plan, no strategy that I was aware of, but that God had this really clear plan that when I look back, I go, oh, I see what you were doing. But I had no idea what was going on at the time, where actually bit by bit he, whether it was as a mum, whether it was as a friend, whether it was as a daughter, whether it was in a job that I had, he was slowly but surely equipping me and giving me different parts of the puzzle, so that when this role came along, that felt like too big a job and too much. Actually, when I stopped and I talked to friends and I prayed and I looked back, and there were a couple of really significant God moments, and I thought, oh, I see. Actually, what's been happening over the last, honestly, 20 years has been me learning in a very unconventional way how to do some of these things, so that when I looked at it, I thought, actually, maybe with a right wind and God's grace, I might be able to do this.
Good stuff. Thanks, Beth.
Yeah. And Lynn, we know that leading in any sphere can be tough, but in the charity sphere, where it's your hearts and minds are all pulled with priorities and the great need that's out there, give us some words of wisdom on how you can guard your heart as well as lead well in charities.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say hello to everybody, whoever's on. But I also want to just say what a privilege it is to join Kyria tonight. And thank you for that amazing opportunity. Really, I do count it a high privilege. And so I think for me, there's a little phrase I've had of that I've said of my own life for many years: the heart of the matter is the matter of the heart.
Yes.
And God always appeals to our hearts, and I think that's what is so important. But I think one of the things that's kind of brought kind of a understanding of guarding our hearts is really that, that passage in Micah, chapter 6 and verse 8, which is often used in the charity world. What does the Lord require of thee? What does the Lord require of you? And I love that little phrase, require, because it's not just an action of doing stuff, but it's really about the heart. What does he require of us in worship, which is our hearts? And I think that's such an important thing for us, no matter what we're doing in the charitable sphere or anything in life. I think doing charity or being part of an NGO or a non-profit, it's a privilege and an honor, as it is to be in any other area, and being in the right place with God. So, I think that guarding of your heart is not kind of putting up the protective stuff around us, but being able to say, okay, God, where are you leading me? And then it goes on, the important thing is what he's shown us is good. What in that Micah passage, I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but what has he shown you that is good? And that word good, I love that word, because it also is about the heart and doing good from the heart. And that's not just a benevolent thing, it's about a kind thing, a bountiful thing, a precious thing. So everything that we are and everything that we do is really from our hearts. Well, it should be, rather than just our heads as Christians. And then it says, and what does he require of us? And so then our hearts, we offer our hearts to him, and then our hearts are led by him. And he requires of us, that Lord, I'll go wherever you want me to go. I'll be whatever you want me to be. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And it's about making you famous. And that's the important thing of our lives, that God's our hearts. So we don't put ourselves in the place where our heart's getting broken all the time. Of course, our hearts get broken. My goodness, my heart gets broken every day. But it's a good breaking rather than a devastation, because I'm trying to keep myself together and keep this thing on the road. And then, there's this beautiful statement from the heart to do justice, to love mercy and kindness, and to walk humbly. And that's how you guard your heart. doing that justice that he shows you every day in the sphere that he's shown you, seeing people and loving people rather than just doing the stuff, and loving mercy and being kind in who we are and walking humbly. But I think the most important thing about our hearts is, I remember somebody saying to me once, the one fear that a Christian should have is allowing ourselves to have that spiritual cardiac arrest, where our hearts just flatline and we don't feel anything anymore. And I think that's what we've got to guard ourselves. And how do we do that? Well, very simply by being led by God's Spirit and keeping in step with the Spirit of God. And so that's the important thing. Guarding our hearts is really offering our hearts to him and saying, I want to do what you want me to do. And that's not just once a week or, once a day. It's every moment of this day, inviting his presence in whatever practical or, tedious bits of work that we've got to do. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Some brilliant wisdom from everyone so far. And Anita, coming on to you, we wish we had so much more time to find out about all of our stories and the amazing story that you have too. But we know, don't we, that justice is at the heart of so many of us, but justice is at the heart of so many charities. And I wonder, what does just leadership look like for you as you lead? And what advice would you give to those of us that are in that charitable setting about how we can grow in justice as leaders?
Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all, and I'm really honoured to be around some really great, powerful people this evening, so thank you, and those that are listening, so big shout to you. Justice, it's a really interesting question, because it's often injustice that makes us lead and want us to found charities. With me, I set Freedom Charity up, not because I've been forced into a marriage or gone through any type of abuse. I've come from a massively loving family, being brought up in the East End of London, from parents from the Himalayas, come from a very spiritual background. But seeing injustice as I was growing up, from a 17-year-old karate instructor to one of my students being forced into marriage and not even ever hearing that concept, to hearing about girls that had been brutally cut, hearing about the worst kind of justice against women and girls, made me want to do something about it. And I believe justice is about doing something from the inside. We can all sit back and complain about how things are wrong, but we have to put our heads above the parapet and say, this is wrong. And I honestly believe if you don't stand up and say it, even however you do that, you can become party to that injustice. So for me, it's been incredibly important with the work at Freedom Charity that we all stand together united and not just say, but demand injustices are altered and changed. There's a new law coming out today, and it's just been announced today that it is going to be law against virginity testing and hymenoplasty. And that's something I've been working on for a number of years. So that injustice, as far as the law is concerning, will come to an end. But in reality, those girls and women that are being forced to go through this injustice still live that trauma. So we have a duty. And in terms of leadership, if you are leading and leading by example, you have to be just in that role. You have to be fair. Not only in your heart, but you have to be seen to be fair in every single thing that you do, and get the very best out of people you work with in your team, because you are only part of a team. If you're the CEO or the executive of charity, you're often just a mouthpiece for all the other people that are working. And I always thinking, but by the grace of God, it could be one of us in those very tragic situations. So we do it with humility and blessings that we can make a difference. And sometimes you're right, it's heartbreaking, but we have a lot more power that we can really lift ourselves up and lift other people with us. But we don't do it on our own. We take people with us on that journey, and they help us to grow.
Thank you. So, question to all of you, just one quick point on what word of encouragement would you give to charity leaders at this time, particularly at this time? It's quite tough with all the things that's been going on, the pandemic and all the different injustices that are happening and have been highlighted in the media.
I don't know what order you want us to go, but I'll jump in. And I thought about this question. The phrase that came to my mind was that verse from Esther, that you've been chosen for such a time as this. And I think when you feel so confident that God has called you to where you are, however inadequate you feel or however impossible the challenge feels, then actually that carries you through. Because if you can hold on to that and know that God's put you here for such a time as this, that he's chosen you, it means he'll also resource you, he'll also equip you, he'll also provide for what you need. And it's just that promise to hold on to when the times get really tough.
Thank you, that's great. Lynn?
You know what? All I want to say is keep your heads up, keep your focus in front of you, and take one step at a time. And you know what? Just keep your joy up.
That's good.
Seriously, you have to learn how to laugh at stuff in the midst of all the pain. And, you know, I mean, I love, you know, I could feel, Anita, your heart when you were talking about what has gone on with you. And my goodness, I won't go into it now, but New Day United has gone through extreme stuff this year. And what we did as a team that we just kept, you know, we kept smiling, we kept laughing through the tears. We found God's joy. So that's what I would say.
Brilliant.
I think a word I would say is something my father always said, and my mother says it to me when I go out and do anything: be brave.
Right.
Be brave, because, you know, this is difficult. And if it wasn't difficult, would it be testing us? Would we be making a difference? So I think my key word is, regardless of however difficult it is, finding that bravery, if it's allowing the Lord to be brave and work through what we're doing. But I think bravery is incredibly important, that we have courage to do what we believe is the right thing to do on the journey that we take, and to bring people with us on that journey. We're not alone. However, sometimes we might think we're definitely not alone, and we've got a lot of help and support. So being brave would be my key word here.
That's big. Right, so Anita, just staying with you for a moment, in terms of the practical aspect of running a charity, in terms of what skills and training, competencies, because it is a different type of leading. You've got people that are paid, people are unpaid. What would you advise in that regard, in terms of what you would need and what you should keep putting in place to have the skills to lead a charity well?
I think the key thing is that the most important thing that someone can give you, apart from love, is time. You know, I would do anything to have 5 more minutes with my father, you know. And I think for me, if someone's giving up their time to be a volunteer working with a charity, is use that time really wisely, and don't dumb down the fact, oh, they're only a volunteer. I hear that in many sectors. The volunteers, the people that are making the big difference, they're giving up something really important. And often people are looking for roles and looking for things to do. And often people can't afford to be volunteers in charities because they just don't have that resource available to them. But it can lead to other things. The charitable sector is huge. It can lead to many other paid types of employment in the future. So I would say, if you're really looking to make a difference, there are some fantastic organisations that would welcome you with open arms. And find ones that you feel passionate about. Find ones that will break your heart every day, but you know you're going to make a difference. Bless you. Finding things that make a difference and sticking with it. And if you have volunteers, treat them with respect, treat them with love, compassion, and find things and ask people what they're good at, what their passions are. And once you know what those are, or they believe, you can start exploring lots of avenues. Work with them to explore, grow, be the best people they're going to be. And that will only help everybody within the organisation and the people you're helping and supporting. So we all work together as a team. So I think that's really important, that we can find a way forward together. And those that are employed are in a really fortunate position. I mean, we all work more than the hours that we're given to work, and that's part and parcel of doing this. You know, once I always said, you know, founding a charity is a way to keep you maybe financially poor, but emotionally, spiritually very wealthy. You couldn't be we're in very privileged positions, and being able to make a difference and touch people's lives, something you feel humbled and blessed for.
Yeah, that's great, Anita. Thanks for sharing that. And we've got about 2 more questions, folks, before those of you that are interested in joining us in the Zoom room. You may have some specific questions for Anita, Becca, or Lynn, or any of us. We'd love you to join us. That link there is in the chat bar, so make sure that you have a view of that before we close down this live. But Lynn, just coming back to you, there are many of us that are watching or will watch back on this, that as charity leaders or as CEOs, executive directors, etc., it's actually our responsibility for fundraising. Good word. We all kind of, but you know, it's a struggle, isn't it? It's a real struggle in terms of what that looks like to fundraise for our charities. And I wonder if you've got any kind of encouragement, advice, or counsel that you would give. What have you seen that works? We need to know.
You know, and I think it's always a challenge. But you know, I think it was William Booth who said, "Where God guides, He provides." And I remember somebody saying that to me, and I just went, I don't want to hear that. Just give me 5 easy steps. But I think what is really important is always start with bringing our request to God.
Yes.
You know, I think that's so important for us, you know, and being able to say, God, you give me the wisdom, you give me the leadership on how to do this. And, you know, especially in the areas that we work in Africa, you know, there's always a huge need that's coming up. But I've seen God's incredible faithfulness in providing. And, you know, I think there are various ways that you can do it. So, of course, going after the funding pots is always a good idea, you know, sharing ideas together. But funding pots don't really have relationship. You know, you're just filling out something and you send it off and you hope like mad that they like what you've written, that you've edited it well, and all is good. So for me, I think what is so critical, and maybe it's just because this is how I'm wired, is partnerships and relationships. So, and then say to people, I don't just want you to donate to appease your conscience or give. I want you to partner with what we're doing. And that is, for me, is one of the most important things. And I would say to anybody who's kind of exploring this area, one of the most fantastic little booklets I read was by Henri Nouwen, called Spirituality of Fundraising. And it is a brilliant book to read. And it shifted a lot inside of me, where I moved from cap in hand to being able to say to people, this is the most phenomenal thing that you can give it. And so for us, on a practical level, it's we have a thing called the 2020 campaign. So we invite people to give £20 for 20 months. And then at the end of that period of time, going back to them and saying, you know, thank you, would you like to do it again? So there's a relationship there. And the other thing is, you know, for me, just picking up the phone to some people and saying, hey, listen, you know, I prayed for you, and it's not manipulation. I prayed for you, and I want to give you an opportunity to be part of this incredible adventure.
That's so good.
Yeah. So I believe in what I do.
Yes.
And so for me to be able to include other people to come on with what I'm doing is it's not a hard sell. It's just telling them the incredible God adventure.
Amazing. And Lynn, you do this so well, just to encourage you. I remember, I think it was your birthday last year, you used Facebook to your advantage, and you told everyone to buy you a cup of tea or buy you a cup of coffee. So instead of a present, instead of well wishes, you know, chuck in 3-4 quid, and that went to New Day. So I think there's some creative stuff we can do there as well, the little and often. And for folks, those of you that are watching, we want to let you know as you head back to all of the rest of the leadership focuses that we're going to be doing throughout this year, there's a specific one that we're going to be running all about finance and fundraising. And that's going to be on Thursday, the 23rd of June. So again, head to our website and you can see all of these monthly events. And so if you want to know more about that, there'll be a different panel. It sounds like we should invite you back to that one as well, Lynn.
I want to say one other thing.
Sure.
What is so important is a heart of generosity.
Great.
Always.
Great.
Don't always want the money. Be able to give the money as well. Be generous.
Great. Thanks, Lynn.
No, thank you. And just leading on from that, the networking, the building of relationships and things like that, I just wanted to ask Becca, what would your advice be on the importance of networking? And would you recommend, what books would you recommend in regards to resources or books or for leading in the charity sphere?
I've just written down, I didn't write down Lynn's suggestion because I haven't even seen that. So that sounds awesome. It's so good to benefit on with people who you just learn from. It is such a privilege to be here with everybody. But actually, I was sat there and I was thinking, what have I read and what has been useful? There are books around leadership in general. Things like Kate Coleman's 7 Deadly Sins has been phenomenally useful for me. I found that exceptionally helpful. But actually, when it comes to the charity sector itself, there are just some really great online resources. So websites like the Directory of Social Change, they run excellent courses and they have a lot of really great handbooks. And I've got one here just on like business and strategic planning, which makes you want to fall asleep on many levels, but it's actually really helpful. And for somebody like me who always is constantly feeling like I've come in something and I don't know if I know what I'm doing. I kind of intuitively think I do, but it's helpful to have something to go, oh, well, there's an actual framework that I can use in language that makes sense. And so often, and they've got resources on so many different things. And there are lots of little websites, and organizations like that, like Small Charity Coalition has been brilliant, although I think it's closing down now, which is really sad. But there are lots of other ones like that with free courses, free resources, templates, all kinds of things that if you're just starting out and you haven't come from a background of being trained into it, you can actually learn a lot along the way. And when it comes, but I love that you asked me about relationships and networking. I always struggle with the word networking because it feels a little bit transactional and a little bit like you're going out to find people to use them. But I love building a relationship and I love making new friends. And one of the things, the question at the beginning was, what has God had to do in me? And one of the other things God's had to do in me, aside from like his stealth training that I didn't realize was happening, is he's had to help me overcome my fear of asking people for help. Because I hate asking people to help me. I hate putting them out. I hate taking the time. And there's an element of that probably is pride, even though it's fear. It's like it's a really messy part of me that God's had to really work on. But actually, in the 18 months that I've been leading Restored, God has brought alongside me the most incredible people just when I needed them. And my absolute favourite example is the day that I sat down to realise that my AGM was coming up. So I got out all the papers, I got out the Constitution, and I read it and I got to the end and I thought, holy cow, I'm not entirely sure I know what I'm doing, and I've got a sneaky suspicion that there's some things missing that we're not quite straight. And I thought, I don't know how to go forward with this. I think we might need to rewrite a constitution. I don't know where to begin. And that day, a lady emailed who just said, oh, I'd love to volunteer for Restored. And this comes back to what you said, Nita, right? And one of my team wrote and went, oh, we're not doing events at the moment because of lockdown. I said, no, just get everyone's CV and we'll just constitution. So she's a corporate governance lawyer who used to be COO. And I was like, oh, yes, you can volunteer for me. I got just the job. And she's just been extraordinary. She walked me through the AGM. She helped me go do a governance review, which would have made my eyes bleed. She's just been extraordinary. And probably 3 years ago, I couldn't have asked her for help. And yet, actually, I got over myself, and I've now got I've got some brilliant people in my life who I've just been able to go, I need to think about my staffing. Can you help? And they just give me an hour, and and those friendships and those relationships and those people who are wise and brilliant, but also kind and lovely. I've just lent into those relationships, and then I try and help where I can help other people.
Yeah,
aware that I'm on a learning journey. And so I think relationships are everything, and building
Mm.
those is so important.
So true. Wow. Gosh, haven't we all been filled tonight with so much encouragement, so much wisdom? And yeah, just coming back to what you were saying there, Becca, we want to remind you that as Kyria Network, we're here to relate. That's at the heart of what we're all about. We want to cheer each other on, champion each other on this leadership journey. And so do use our community in any sphere of influence that you're watching us on this evening. If you've got questions, we want to encourage you to jump onto Zoom right now. You can start to log in right now and we'll see you. And any questions you've got about the charitable sphere, but it might be that as you process and as you watch this back, you think, actually, I could do with a bit more of an understanding about that. Please feel free to contact us via our email, contact us via our website, etc. And we'll be sure to do what we can to help and to continue to relate with you. Just one more thing before we close off this live and move on to Zoom. I want to say a massive thank you to you on behalf of Lisa and I and the rest of the Kyria team. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Becca and Lynn, for all of your wise advice and all of your encouragement to us all this evening. But to all of you who are watching, thank you again for engaging this evening. But we want to remind you that here at Kyria, as we continue to relate and resource you in as many ways as we can, we're a small and nimble organisation. So you might want to consider just supporting us as we continue to champion, empower and support women in leadership. We're popping up a link there about how you can do that. And a bit referring back to what Lynn was saying there, we call our supporters Kyria champions and Kyria partners. And so if you're watching this and thinking, I've really got a lot out of this evening, why not consider making a donation? It could be a one-off donation, or you might feel the Lord's put on your heart that you could just do a little bit more there. Even £5 a month makes all the difference. But we're so delighted to be able to have shared this resource with you this evening. So there's the link for you, ladies, and anyone else who's watching. We can see that some of you are logging into the waiting room already. We're going to close this live now. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and God bless and enjoy the rest of your evening.